My name is Marcus. I'm 25, and I make my home in a quiet suburb just a stone's throw from Indianapolis. I've always been the kind of person who finds peace in precision and order. While my peers were chasing university degrees or settling into cubicles, I spent the last several years funneling every spare cent I earned into a singular vision. I studied the art of service, the mechanics of luxury vehicles, and the logistics of executive transport. My ambition was to launch my own high-end chauffeur and personal driving service. Just a few months ago, that dream became a reality. It's a humble beginning, to be sure. My fleet consists of one vehicle, an older but immaculately maintained black sedan that gleams under any light. I spent a year restoring the interior myself, and its engine purrs with a reliability I'm deeply proud of. I have a stack of business cards I designed online and a simple professional website. I named my company Apex Executive Transport. In the beginning, my clientele was sparse, mostly airport runs for distant relatives or driving for friends of the family during special occasions. I wasn't turning a profit, not by a long shot. Most of the work was done at a steep discount or for whatever they felt was fair. I understood that building a reputation was paramount. My mantra became, treat every trip like you're driving a CEO to $1 billion deal. That's how you earn trust. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I was at my small apartment desk, polishing my leather driving gloves and wondering if I would ever land a client who wasn't on my Christmas card list. My phone vibrated, displaying a number I didn't recognize. Apex Executive. I answered, my voice steady and professional. A crisp, articulate voice responded. Hello, I received your information from the concierge at the Conrad. I need a driver for a meeting this evening. Are you available? I straightened in my chair, my pulse quickening. Yes, absolutely. I can be ready whenever you need me. She provided an address in one of the most exclusive parts of the city. After we disconnected, I held the phone for a long moment, just looking at it. This was it, my first genuine corporate client. That evening I prepared my car meticulously. I vacuumed the floor mats, wiped down every surface, and placed a chilled bottle of water in the rear cup holder. My heart hammered against my ribs as I pulled up to the address, a sleek, modern home with large glass windows overlooking a manicured landscape. It was a statement of success, sophisticated without being gaudy. The kind of place that belonged to someone whose time was incredibly valuable. Getting out of the car, I took a calming breath and smoothed the lapels of my suit jacket. Be the professional you claim to be, I told myself. I sent a text message as instructed. Your driver has arrived. A few seconds later, the front door opened. My first impression of her is etched in my memory. She appeared to be in her early 40s, tall and poised, wearing a tailored business suit that spoke of authority and refined taste. Her blonde hair was styled in an elegant, no-nonsense cut. Good evening, I'm Eleanor, she said, her smile polite but brief. You must be Marcus. Yes, ma'am. It's a pleasure to meet you. Eleanor is fine, she corrected gently, her gaze appraising me and my vehicle. I opened the rear door for her, and she slid inside with a quiet nod of approval. She gave me the address of a downtown skyscraper, and I pulled away from the curb smoothly. The first part of the drive was quiet. The sky, which had been grey all day, was beginning to look bruised and ominous. The last car service I used was 20 minutes late, she remarked, breaking the silence. Punctuality is everything to me. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. It's the cornerstone of my business, Eleanor. I got to work, focusing on the road. The weather was turning fast. A light drizzle became a steady rain, and within minutes the sky opened up. Rain lashed against the windshield in blinding sheets, and the wind began to howl. My sedan, usually so quiet, was buffeted by powerful gusts. Other drivers were becoming erratic, braking suddenly or swerving. I slowed my speed, my hands steady on the wheel, my focus absolute. I anticipated the flow of traffic, maintained a safe distance, and navigated the flooded intersections with practiced ease. At one point, a car in the next lane hydroplaned, spinning wildly before coming to a stop just feet from a guardrail. I saw it coming a second before it happened, and had already eased off the accelerator, giving myself plenty of room. Eleanor, who had been looking at her phone, looked up, her knuckles white as she gripped her purse. I saw her watch me, my calm demeanor, my unwavering control of the vehicle. "That was close," she murmured, her voice a little shaky. "We're all right," I replied, my tone even and reassuring. "Just need to be patient." The rest of the drive was a battle against the elements. Thunder cracked overhead, and lightning illuminated the deluge, turning the world into a series of stark, flashing images. I could feel her anxiety radiating from the back seat, but I just kept driving, a steady hand in the chaos. When we finally pulled under the covered entrance of her destination, the storm was at its peak. I put the car in park and turned to her. "We're here, Eleanor." She let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for miles. She looked from the raging storm outside to me, her expression unreadable for a moment. "Thank you," she said, her voice sincere. "That was intense. I'm just glad you're here safely." Then, with a small, almost surprised smile, she tilted her head and said the words that would change everything. "You know, you're the only man who makes me feel safe on a dangerous road." I was taken aback, unsure how to respond to such a personal and potent compliment. "I'll keep that in mind." Managed, a small chuckle escaping me. She smiled, a genuine warmth reaching her eyes for the first time. "I'll be in touch to arrange the return trip. I'll definitely be calling you again." I watched her walk into the building, then drove away, feeling a sense of accomplishment that had nothing to do with money. It was a feeling of profound validation. Maybe, just maybe, this was all going to work out. 3 days passed. I kept my phone close, doing a few small airport runs for a local travel agent I'd connected with. I was still hustling, still trying to get my name out there. Every evening, I'd check my email, hoping for a booking from a new client, but the inbox remained quiet. I fought off the tendrils of discouragement, reminding myself that building a business is a marathon, not a sprint. Then, on Friday morning, my phone chimed with a text. It was her, Eleanor. I read the message twice before my brain fully registered it. "Marcus, it's Eleanor. I hope this isn't too short notice, but I need a ride to the airport tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. pickup." "Not at all." I typed back immediately, my fingers flying across the screen. "I'll be there." I stared at the phone again. It wasn't just a one-time crisis call. I had a repeat client, a very good one. The next morning, I was parked outside her house at 5:45 a.m. As I pulled up, I saw the porch light was on, and a moment later she emerged, looking just as polished as before, even at this early hour. She was pulling a small suitcase, and I immediately got out to assist her. As I took the bag from her, I noticed the street was still littered with small branches and leaves from the storm a few days prior. "Looks like that storm did a number on the neighborhood," I commented, placing her luggage securely in the trunk. "It certainly did," she said, a brief shadow crossing her face. "Some of my neighbors had flooded basements. We were lucky." The drive to the airport was smooth and quiet. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I wanted to impress her again, not just for the potential future business, but because I was building a brand of absolute reliability. After about 20 minutes of comfortable silence, I saw Eleanor looking at me in the rearview mirror. She was studying me, not in an invasive way, but with a thoughtful curiosity. "You really are very professional," she remarked. "It's the only way to be in this business," I said. She smiled faintly. "Not everyone sees it that way." We chatted a bit more during the rest of the drive. It was easy, casual conversation about her work trip, the terrible airport traffic, even the poor service of the company she used to use. I couldn't help but notice how relaxed she seemed, a stark contrast to the tense passenger I'd had during the storm. I kept my focus on the road, though, providing a smooth and efficient ride. As I pulled up to the departures curb, she looked pleased. "Marcus, you've done it again. Perfect timing, as always." I smiled, feeling a surge of pride in my work. "Thank you, Eleanor. I'm glad I could provide the service you expect." Then, unexpectedly, she paused for a moment before speaking. "I know this is unconventional, but I travel constantly. Almost every week. I can't deal with unreliable services anymore. Would you be interested in being my regular driver? We could work out a monthly retainer. It would guarantee you the business and give me peace of mind." I blinked, completely caught off guard. A retainer? That was the kind of arrangement established services dreamed of. I wasn't sure what to say, but she gave me a warm, reassuring look, as if it were the most logical proposal in the world. "You must have other clients, I'm sure, but my schedule is fairly predictable." She continued. "I would love to, but I wouldn't want to overcommit." I replied honestly, "Nonsense." She waved it off. "Think about it. Send me a proposal. Let's make this work." Something about her confidence in me made me relax. I nodded. "All right, thank you. I will." I helped her with her bag, and she headed into the terminal. I sat in my car for a long time in the cell phone lot, the engine off. Her offer echoed in my mind. This wasn't just about a few rides. This was a foundation. This was stability. I drove home, my thoughts racing. Her home was just as impressive in the daylight as it had been at night, I recalled. The clean lines, the perfect landscaping. It all spoke of a life built on precision and success. My own life felt so far from that, a constant struggle to make ends meet. But her offer felt like a bridge. Later that day, I drafted a proposal. I researched industry standards for retainers, determined a fair price for my services that accounted for my time and vehicle upkeep, and sent it to her. I tried to keep my expectations in check. She was a savvy businesswoman. She might negotiate or even change her mind. She replied within the hour. "This looks perfect. Let's proceed." We sat and ate. The conversation flowed easier than I expected. She asked about my business, how I started, and what my goals were. I told her the truth, that I was barely breaking even, still using my personal savings to cover gas and insurance, and hoping one day to have a fleet of vehicles and a team of professional drivers. "You have ambition," she said with a soft smile. "Most people your age are just drifting." I shrugged, a little embarrassed by the praise. "I'm just trying to build something that lasts." After dinner, she opened a bottle of wine and offered me a glass. I politely declined, mentioning I still had to drive home. "I respect that." She nodded. Not many would have said no. We sat there a little longer, just talking. It was strange, but not uncomfortable. There was no pressure, just an unexpected ease between two people from very different worlds. As the sun began to set, I stood and thanked her for the meal. "Thank you, Rachel, for everything." She walked me to the door. "I meant what I said earlier. I'll probably find a few more things around here for you to fix soon." She teased lightly. I chuckled. I looked forward to it. Driving home that night, I kept thinking about how surreal the day had felt. I didn't know what it meant, if anything, but I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe my life was about to change in ways I never expected. The following week passed by in a blur of small jobs and long hours. I had picked up a couple of extra clients in the neighborhood thanks to Rachel's recommendation. Word travels fast in these communities, and people liked my attention to detail. I was grateful, but the work was exhausting. Then came Friday afternoon. I was wrapping up a hedge trimming job when my phone buzzed. It was her. "Hey, Alex, are you free tomorrow?" I wiped sweat from my forehead and smiled. "I think I can be. What's up?" "My backyard needs a bit of help. The garden looks overgrown, and I know you'll make it perfect." I agreed without hesitation. Rachel had become my best-paying and most loyal client. I'd be lying if I said I didn't look forward to working at her place. There was something calming about her home, her energy. The next morning, I loaded my tools into the van and headed over. As I pulled into her driveway, I noticed her standing on the front steps, waving with a smile. She was wearing casual jeans and a fitted white shirt. Simple, elegant, effortlessly graceful, like always. "Morning, Alex." She greeted me. "Morning, Rachel. Where do you want me to start?" We walked around to the backyard together. The space was large and well designed, but clearly needed some love. Shrubs were growing wildly, flowers were tangled, and weeds had claimed the stone pathways. "I know it's a lot," she admitted. "Take your time. I'm around if you need anything." I got to work. The sun was high and relentless. Sweat poured down my back as I trimmed, pulled, raked, and shaped everything into order. I worked for hours without even thinking about the time. Occasionally, I caught Rachel watching me from the kitchen window or stepping out with a glass of iced tea to offer me. I declined at first, focused on finishing the job, but eventually gave in when she insisted. "Come on, Alex," she said, handing me the cold glass. "Even the hardest workers need a break." I sat on the back steps for a few minutes, sipping the cold drink and staring out at the half-finished garden. Rachel sat down next to me. "You're really dedicated to this," she said softly. I nodded. "It's my name on the business. I want people to remember me for good work." She smiled at that. "Well, you're doing just that." I went back to work and finished the job by early evening. The transformation was undeniable. The hedges were perfect, the flowers neat, the weeds gone. It looked like a completely different backyard. Rachel came out and gasped in delight. "Alex, it's beautiful. You've outdone yourself." "Thank you," I said, brushing dirt from my gloves. Then came the unexpected moment. She paused, almost hesitant, then said, "Listen, I know it's not usual, but would you like to stay for dinner? It's just me here, and I made way too much food. Consider it a small thank you." I hesitated, caught off guard again, the same way I had been before. This wasn't standard client behavior, but something about her tone, the casual ease, made it feel natural. "Sure," I replied after a moment. "Thank you." I parked my car and followed her inside. Her home felt different in the evening light, warm, inviting, peaceful. Soft jazz played from a speaker in the living room. The aroma of something delicious, like roasted chicken and herbs, filled the air. We sat at the kitchen table again. The conversation picked up right where it had left off. I told her about growing up in a small town, my decision to start my own company, and the day-to-day struggles of trying to grow a business with almost no capital. Eleanor listened with genuine interest, nodding occasionally and asking insightful questions. It never felt like an interrogation or an interview. It felt like two people connecting on a human level. "You're very courageous, you know," she said at one point, her gaze direct. "Most people wouldn't take this kind of risk." "I don't know if it's courage or just being too stubborn to quit." I laughed. We finished our meal, and she poured herself another glass of wine. "I know you won't have any because you're driving, but I'm having one," she said with a playful smile. I smiled back. "Fair enough." It was late by the time I finally stood to leave. I thanked her again for the meal and the conversation. As I walked toward the front door, she followed me and rested her hand lightly on my arm, stopping me for just a second. I meant what I said. I have a feeling I'll be needing your services quite a bit, she said softly. I nodded, not quite sure what to say. My heart was beating a little faster, though I couldn't pinpoint why. Good night, Eleanor. Good night, Marcus. I stepped out into the crisp night air, got into my sedan, and just sat there for a moment before turning the key. Something about that evening felt significant, like the beginning of a new chapter. I didn't know what it meant, but I decided not to analyze it. I just smiled to myself and drove home. The following weeks settled into a comfortable and predictable rhythm. I continued to build my business, taking on any new client I could find. My days were long, starting before dawn and often ending late at night. But every time Eleanor's name popped up on my phone with a new itinerary, I made sure my schedule was clear. She became my priority, not just because our retainer agreement was the financial bedrock of my company, but because I genuinely valued our interactions. Eleanor was unlike any client I could have imagined. There was a quiet strength about her, a calm confidence that was both intimidating and inspiring. Every time I pulled up to her house, she would greet me with that same warm, professional smile that somehow made the long hours and endless driving feel less like work. On one of those late summer afternoons, she had called with an unusual request. Marcus, I have a conference in Cincinnati next week. It's a 2-day event. I was going to fly, but I dread the hassle. Would you ever consider a long-distance trip? I'd cover all your expenses, of course. I'll be there, I said without a moment's hesitation. The next week, I loaded her luggage into my trunk, and we set off. The sun was bright as we merged onto the highway. As I drove, Eleanor worked from the back seat, taking calls and answering emails. But as the hours passed, the work tapered off, and she put her laptop away. Our conversations were still mostly about business and current events, but I could feel a subtle shift happening between us. Little moments of shared silence, brief glances in the rearview mirror that held a bit longer than necessary. I've never had a driver who put so much care into their work, she said at one point, leaning forward slightly. You truly love what you do. I nodded, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. I'm building something. Every trip matters. She was quiet for a moment after that. It shows, she finally said. When we arrived at her hotel in Cincinnati, the valet looked at my older sedan with a hint of disdain. But Eleanor didn't seem to notice. I got her bags and saw her to the check-in desk. I'll be on standby, I told her. Just text me when you need me. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of short trips from the hotel to the convention center, to dinner meetings, and back. I was always there, 5 minutes early, car cool and ready. On the drive back to Indianapolis, she was visibly exhausted. The conference had been a success, but it had drained her. You've earned a break, I said, glancing at her in the mirror. You look tired. The way she looked at me wasn't flirtatious. Not exactly. It was appreciative, but there was an undercurrent of something deeper I couldn't quite name. I hesitated for only a second. Sure. We stopped at a quiet, well-lit diner off the highway. Inside, she offered me a seat in the booth, while she ordered coffee for herself and a soda for me. We talked about life, about work, about how she had been married once, years ago, but had been single for a long time. There was no bitterness in her voice when she spoke, only a matter-of-fact honesty. I told her about my parents, how my father had been a mechanic who taught me the value of maintaining your tools, and how I dreamed of one day owning a small fleet of high-end vehicles. I think you'll get there, she said with a quiet certainty that felt more meaningful than any hollow encouragement I'd ever received. It was getting late. I paid the bill before she could object, and we headed back to the car. Then, just before I pulled back onto the highway, she caught me. completely off guard. "I've been thinking," she began, turning in her seat to look at me directly. "You don't have to say yes to this, but I've been considering making an investment in your business. I see how much this means to you, and I believe in what you're doing." I froze, my hand hovering over the gear shift. I wasn't expecting that. "Eleanor, that's incredibly generous, but I don't know if I can accept something like that." She smiled gently. "You don't have to decide now. Just think about it. I want to help." I sat there for a second, feeling completely overwhelmed. No one, not even my own family, had ever offered me that kind of tangible support. I nodded slowly. "I'll think about it. Thank you, Eleanor." "Of course," she said softly. "Let's get home." I pulled back onto the road, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to refuse immediately. I had built this company on my own sweat and determination. But another part of me knew this could change everything. A new luxury